Hello, hello, and welcome to PD in your PJs. I'm so excited to be here with you for this session. You should hear me talking now, and I do want you to know that we're recording the webinar, and you will get that recording in an email shortly after we conclude. More importantly, though, you're going to get the slides in that email. So all of the great resources and tips and tricks and links that Eric's going to share with you will come to you in an email. So remember, you can't click any links here tonight during the webinar, but later you'll get these slides in the email, and you can go back through them at your own leisure and click through anything you see there. Also be thinking about questions. If you have any, you can type them in the question box and we can get those answered at the end. Quick introduction. My name's Julie. I was a high school ELA teacher for 18 years. Now I'm on the teacher community team at Seesaw. Go ahead and find me on Twitter. I'm at EdTechJulieJ. Give me a follow because I share lots of resources and ideas about Seesaw. And then, of course, you can connect with our team on Twitter at Seesaw. Now, I want to tell you that this webinar is not really going to go over setting up a class or getting started or any other tips for teachers who are brand new to Seesaw. So if those are the kind of resources you need, don't forget to visit ideas.seesaw.me to find everything you need to get started. And then you can also look at our upcoming PD calendar at web.seesaw.me/PDs, because then you can find other topics that are suited to your needs or to your grade level that you're teaching. So look for those other webinars that will suit your needs. Like there's always a webinar coming up that might teach you something new. I'm so excited to be here tonight with Eric. Hi, Eric. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good. So excited to hear what you have to say. I'm going to switch the presenter mode over to you, and then you will be able to take it away.
All right, great. I'll go ahead and show my screen here, and I'll bring up my slides. Can you see them okay?
We absolutely can. You're good to go.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. I am so excited to be with you tonight. Like Julie said, my name is Eric Robinson. I teach second grade. I also have taught first grade and am in my 14th year of teaching. And one of my favorite things to do is share not only just technology tips, but innovation ideas with educators. So again, I'm just so happy to be able to share with you. You can always reach out to me if you have questions or anything like that on Twitter at ours first grade. Also, I have a podcast called Teachers Talking Tech. And along with that, there's a YouTube page with some technology tips as well. All right, so just so you know, by the way, I know a lot of times when you go to these webinars, you think like, oh, this must be like a technology expert and all that kind of thing. So I do know a lot about technology, but I want you to know that like in 2010, I actually did not even own a cell phone, and I was kind of anti-technology only because I felt my strengths were my connections with children and making really meaningful and deep connections with children. And so when I share technology tips and things like that with teachers, that's always where I'm coming from, and that's my philosophy. So I just wanted you to know that before we dig in. All right, so let's get started. Here's our plan for tonight. The plan is we're going to go over what. Okay, so what do I mean by clone yourself? Why would you want to do it? And then most importantly, how can you do it? And then finally, I want to leave time for questions because we all have so many different needs in our classroom, different devices, all those type of things. So I want to make sure that we leave time for that. All right, so let's do this. So let's just start by talking about blended learning. So in blended learning is the idea that we're using digital media along with traditional classroom methods. Okay, so using video, things like that. The reason I love blended learning is that I think in technology, we tend to kind of follow the latest fads. And an issue with technology is that it accelerates everything, including bad practice. And I feel like blended learning takes the best of what I do and what teachers do in the classroom and then accentuates that, right? It enhances what you're already doing, which is great. All right. Now, that's actually the reason why I really love Seesaw and the reason that I love technology is it keeps me innovating and reinventing myself all the time. Okay, so blended learning is going to kind of be where we're coming from with this. So where this came from is this idea of the flipped model, which you may or may not be familiar with, but it's the idea that to meet children's needs, rather than having the teacher be like the sage on the stage and be the spotlight, instead, the children would go home, or students would go home, they'd watch a video at home, then they would do their homework at school. And so that way the teacher could really go to groups of kids that needed the help. While those who didn't need help, they saw the video and they were good to go. Now, obviously, there's a lot of problems with this model with young students, and really there's some problems with older kids as well. So what I started thinking of was a blended learning model that would work in my classroom. And this was when I taught first grade still, so with really young learners. So I like to do everything small group. And I like that because it's differentiated instruction, okay? Now, anybody who's done any small group, which most of us have, teaching reading, guided reading and things like that, we know that the issue can be that what are all the other kids doing while I'm teaching this small group? And that's what led me to start instructing using video. So what I'm basically doing is I am instructing my small group along with a secondary station or a secondary area where I'm also using video instruction at the same time. So that's where this idea of cloning yourself comes from. And that's the basics of it. I'll get deeper into it and show you some other things you can do. But that's the basics, okay? And I love the way that this fundamentally changes my classroom. This isn't like, oh, what's this app we can use? When you teach this way, you're using your technology to totally change the way you are teaching children, which I think is the most powerful thing. Now, why should you kind of do this? Whether you jump in, whether you just put your toes in the water a little bit. So we all know that sometimes whole class teaching equals half learning, right? It's hard to differentiate. It's hard to get around to all your kids. And really, usually I should say, they don't get much of a voice, right? Because it's a whole class. When I do these small group lessons, I hear from all my students all the time, every day, and I talk less, which I like. And finally, with video, when you use video instruction, students can go at their own pace. Oftentimes, we miss those little cues as teachers where our kids need us to stop or go back. I love with video that my kids can really, they can pause, they can rewind, all those kind of things that they can basically meet their own needs. And I feel like that's, differentiation at its core, okay? So there's kind of the whys. Now, what does this look like in my classroom? Okay, so I have small group instruction, and I should say I use this for all of my subjects, whether it is reading, writing, math, social studies. Anytime that I'm teaching in my classroom, I make it my goal to never be in front of my class. I like to have small groups so that I can kind of be more of a mentor rather than, again, that sage on the stage. So I'll have my small group back with me, okay? One new thing that I've tried is this student-led group, which let me make this a little bigger so you can kind of see what that student-led group looks like. So the student-led group has a teacher, and I wish I could consider this cloning myself, but not quite. But anyway, we have a rotating teacher. It's one of our students. And they have a screen behind them. I have an old flat screen that I brought in from home, and they have a little iPad stand. And basically their job is to call on other kids to collaborate and share ideas. And then their work is up on the screen so that everybody can follow along. If you haven't tried this, I would highly, highly recommend it. It is a bit of a headache, and you have to really tell the kids, like, it's not about finishing your page. It's not about getting all the answers right. It's about communication, collaboration, all those things are so important. But anyway, I love that student-led group. Okay, then here's my screencast lesson. So this is where I'm using video to teach students. And this video in particular is a sort, like a word sort, but you can use this in a ton of different ways. So this would be that screencast lesson. All right, and then the other stations are probably going to be more of a traditional station where you have kids doing worksheets, they're doing games, activities, things like that. All right, just keep in mind, it's really not important what it looks like. I mean, you could do a workshop model, you can do rotations. That's not really the important part. The important part is that your kids are engaged. And I really think that the screencasting keeps my kids engaged. And you can see here, I'm teaching here, I'm also teaching here. All right, and they're different, but I think in a good way. All right, so that's what it looks like in my classroom every day. All right, so now that we've gotten through like the why and the what, let's get into the how. All right, so let's say you want to record some lessons for your students. So for iOS, I would recommend highly this app called Viddle. It was actually made for business, not education, but it is amazing. Now, another one you may have heard of is Explain Everything. And Viddle, by the way, costs about $10, but you are the only one who needs to purchase it. Explain Everything, I think, is right around 8. Doceri is free and is a great place to get started, and great screencasting app. If you have Chromebooks or laptops, you can use Screencastify, Snagit. There's Camtasia is another one. And in fact, if you have a Mac, you're in luck because it's built right into QuickTime. If you open up QuickTime, you can do a screen record right from there, which is great. I should also mention for iOS that you can use Show Me or EduCreations. Really, you just need to find the screencasting app that it works for you. And I'll show you how I do it with Viddle, but you could really use that for anything. Now, just keep in mind also, the teacher is the only one who needs the app. Your students just need a device, and I mean any kind of device, because with Seesaw, they're watching a video, right? So any way you can share a video or watch a video, you're good to go. Also, with iPads, and really, I mean, to be truthful, phones and tablets, they do this best. They really do because of the camera and the ease of using the camera. However, you can use any device again. Now, if you have an iPad, they have a built-in screen recording function now where you can actually just record anything that's on your screen, which is another way to screencast for your students. I'm not going to go over how to do that. What I did is I put 2 videos here that it will show you how to enable screen recording and kind of give you a walkthrough of how to get started with it, and you will get it. It really is not that complex, but it's a great way to, I've done this sharing websites, sharing how to use apps. I have apps that have things in them like hundreds charts or other manipulatives that I love being able to record right on my iPad screen and then share with students. And that's been great, great too. All right, so let me kind of go through a step-by-step with you of what this looks like from the beginning to the end, because there's a couple of steps here, and I think that some people get stuck on some of these and say like, well, I just can't do this. And it's really, once you do it or once you see it done, is not as hard as you may think. All right, so I'm going to minimize this here, and I am going to go, this is my iPad screen you see here. Now, this is the app Viddle. Now, because I'm mirroring, you can't see all the options up here, so you'll have to kind of take my word for it. But like most screencasting apps, it has draw, erase, you can point to things. So let me give you an example. Like pointing, this is what it looks like, right? So as I'm recording my voice, I can just point to things, underline them like this, so students can follow the dot, okay? And what I did here is I added just a screenshot of a math journal page. You can put anything on these. You could just leave it as a whiteboard. You could take pages out of a book, anything you want, okay? Now with the drawing feature, what I like about Viddle is that you can zoom in, and I love that. So while I'm recording my voice, I can zoom in on things, and then I can draw and record, or I'm sorry, I can draw or highlight as well. All right, so sometimes when I record these videos, I will just give one example and then say, okay, you know how to do this, go ahead and go for it. Other times, and most often, I use a pause method. So what I mean by that is, let's say I was doing this problem right here. So I hit record, and now it's recording my voice and my movements. So I would point and read, you know, you buy juice for 64 cents, use quarters, and I would just go through and read this for the student. Then I might give them some clues of how they might complete this. Then I'll tell them, all right, go ahead and pause. So now on my student's device, they click pause. What I'm doing on the recording end is I just count to 3, and then I start talking again, okay? So if you imagine what this looks like from the student view, the student basically has listened to me read the question or give some demonstrations or things like that. Then they press pause and try them, and then press play, and now I go through and I give them the answer so they can check their own work. All right. So unlike most center work, you actually can do this so you don't have to go through and check all of your kids' work after they complete it, which I love. I mean, that adds a lot of extra work on your plate. Now, devil's advocate here, teachers will ask me, well, don't some kids just not press pause and they just watch you? Yes, and that's fine too. If the worst case scenario is that they just watch and follow along with me, I am fine with that. I also have students, that can breeze through this stuff, and I tell them it's okay to fast forward. If you're getting it and you don't need me, just kind of check as you go along, fast forward, and keep going. My strugglers, they can go slower, they can take more time, and I mean, that's differentiation right there, right? They can take more time, they can rewind me and listen to me again. It's like having a remote control. So now, let's just say I went through this whole page, I've gone through. Oh, and by the way, another cool thing on these apps is they work like slideshows. So I can keep on the second page, I could keep a hundreds chart and go right back and forth. So now if I needed, like on this problem here, 54 plus 10, if I was showing them a trick here, now all of a sudden I can just say, oh, 54, we know 10 is straight down. So you can use this right along with your video lesson. So you'll get good at those kind of things once you start to practice. Okay, so that's step one, is recording yourself teaching a lesson. And like I said, I'll show you another example here that I have, which is we talked about dialogue cues or dialogue tags. And so we highlighted where somebody might be talking. And then we talked about getting ready to read that. Okay, so I did a demonstration for them in a video and then said, okay, now I want you to practice this and record it in Seesaw. So a great way to have a station that is independent, but yet still useful. And there's another one here I did for Frog and Toad. We were talking about dialogue tags. So it works great for that. And you can see not only can I draw, but I can actually highlight as well. So very, very cool. So now I'm all done and I'm ready to share this. This is where a lot of teachers will get stuck. So with sharing it, with most of these apps, you choose where you want to share it to. All right, so let me go back to our presentation here, okay? And by the way, in our slides, I go over how to use Viddle to record. And you can see on this one, they went away. When you watch the video, you'll be able to see all the buttons I'm pushing and things like that. So let's see if we can get this going. There we go. So do you see up at the top here, you can see some of the colors and all that. So, and you can see where you press record right up there. So when I'm done, I basically am going to choose where to share this to. Now, you have a lot of choices with this, and that's a good thing. So let me go to the next slide here, and there we go. So once you've recorded your lesson, no matter what it is, you can upload it to YouTube, Drive, Seesaw. I mean, really any kind of a cloud service, and you'll be good to go. Now, I like to use Drive. The reason I like Google Drive is it's great for organization. So I started compiling tons of these videos, and I didn't want to have to remake them every year. Now, some videos I do remake every year because just like you might have gotten a syllabus in college, and it looked like the Magna Carta. It was like all like browned around the edges, and you're like, oh man, this class is going to be terrible. So the same thing, like kids can feel that. If it's like a really old video, I try to refresh them every once in a while. But if I'm doing a math page, like the chances that anything has changed is minimal. Okay, so I use Drive. You can also put these right into Seesaw. Like from Viddle, I can say share. It asks me where do I want to share it to. I can put it right into Seesaw from there if I want to. But let me show you what it looks like in Drive, just so you can see an example. So here's my Drive. And in Google Drive, I just have this folder called Second Grade Screencast, okay? One trick here is I would recommend to share this folder and make it a public folder, okay? And what that means is anything that's dropped into this folder is going to be public. What happens sometimes when we use these services like this, we forget to share them the right way. And you do not want to have your stations all going or whatever and have your kids running up saying, I can't get to the video. It says I don't have permission. So make sure that your link sharing is on, or make sure this whole folder is just shared. And by default, everything inside of here is now shared. Okay, so here's my math screencasts. There they all are. So now with any of these, if I wanted to quickly say, oh, Math Journal page 16, here it is. All I have to do now is get the link. Okay. All right, there's my link. I'll copy it. Now I can go into Seesaw and I can share it with my kids. And I'm going to get into different ways you can share it within Seesaw in just a minute. But that's why I prefer to use Drive. But really, again, you just need to find the way that works for you. Okay, so I'm hoping you're with me so far. So far, we've, basically created a video of some type, right? We saved it, and we might save it to our camera roll. We might save it to Drive. We might save it to YouTube, Seesaw. Really, that's up to you. Okay. And now we're ready for our students to view, right? Oh, sorry, I got one more slide on sharing. This is important too. So when you share this video, there's a couple ways to do it, and I actually do it both of these ways. One way is I create fake students, okay, like math, reading, social studies. So let's say I wanted to share that math video. I get the link, and then when I post it, I just post it to asterisk math. So now parents don't see it because math doesn't have any parents attached to it. All my kids in Seesaw can go right to that, and then there's the video I want them to watch. I don't put 15 videos in here and leave them in there for a month. I just put that one video in there, and then when I'm done with it, I get it out of there and I delete that post. So there's nothing for your kids to say which one's my I don't get it. Okay. Other way to do it is with activities. So with the new Seesaw activities, it's a great way to share these videos. If you want feedback from kids, you basically do your instructions, okay? And then where it says attach example, your example can be your video you created. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, so let's go into our activities. And here is a word sort I want my kids to do, right? So they go in on their end, they say add student response. Now here is my sort, here's where I want them to move all the words to. When they click up here for the directions, it says watch the video. Here's the video right there, okay? And they can click on that and off they go. They can start watching the video and then they can do the assignment. Okay, there it is. So that's what it's looking like right there. Okay. So again, when you share it this way, what you're doing when you create an activity is you're sharing that as your example. Okay. And when you share it as your example, it'll live right there. And then your kids, when they go to the station, can watch the video, do an activity, and it's all independent. Okay. And I love this about Seesaw activities. Now, if you're wondering, well, what if I'm not one-to-one? What if I only have 3 iPads or I only have Chromebooks or whatever? This works no matter how many devices you have. When I started this, I only had 4 iPads in my room. It was fine. One station was watching the video, and I had some kids working together on it. But you don't have to have one-to-one to make this work. Okay. Now, one other trick here: if you're posting to like a fake student, I do my spelling test this way. I record my spelling test and then I actually put their names in the caption so that when my kids go to that spelling test fake student, then there may be 3 tests in there. They find the one to watch with their name and then they watch it and off they go. So that's a little trick for you, especially if you're not one-to-one, but even if you are, to differentiate. Okay, I love that. Okay, so plowing ahead here. We're to the point here where students are ready to watch our video, right? So they go to Seesaw, they quickly find their video, and they're off and rolling, okay? Now you can see I love blending paper pencil with the technology, okay? You don't have to do everything on the iPad or everything on the Chromebook. It just doesn't have to be that way. My students have a little stand here, which, by the way, you can get those anywhere you can buy library supplies, like little book display stands. You can get them for like $2, $3, $4. They work great to hold the iPad upright. And I love that because then it gives them more room on their desks to have their book and go along with me. So again, students are watching as I lead them through activity and pause. I put a video here for you to watch. So when you go back and you look at these slides, you can kind of see how I build the video, and you might like it. You'll also hear that I put awesome jokes at the beginning of my videos. I'm kidding. They're really cheesy, terrible jokes, but I put cheesy jokes at the beginning of my videos, just kind of engage kids a little bit, make them fun, okay? All right, so when you're getting started, you're like, all right, I'm ready to give this a try. Here's what I recommend. Just record a short lesson and meet with your groups. Just show them how to get to the videos, talk with them about pausing, rewinding if they need to, and just tell them it's like they have a teacher remote control. Make them fun. Okay, I can't tell you how many teachers will re-record something 15 times because their voice didn't sound right or this and that. Okay, this is just like when you're up in front of the class. Like, make mistakes and let your kids hear them. It's okay. I've had kids walk in the middle and ask me questions, phones ringing, all that kind of stuff. It's all good. I also learned, don't overuse them, right? If you start doing this and you're like, these are awesome, don't get so excited that you overdo it. You'll know. Your kids will start kind of going, when you say it's time for a video. If they're doing that, just back off a little bit, okay? One other trick is add more difficult content at the end for students that need a challenge. So often my struggling students might not even make it through the entire video, and that's okay. I tell them it's all good. For my high students, they're going to zip right through it. So I will usually put like brain busters or whatever you want to call them, higher order thinking skills and those kind of questions at the end so that those kids that zip through and they get to those, they have something to think about for a challenge. Be careful when you're using pre-made like YouTube, Khan Academy screencast. If you're like, yeah, I don't really have time to record this, I'm just going to grab one from YouTube. Remember, you have a connection with your students. One thing I would say is that if you want to save some time and you want to record some things, get your grade level team or other people in your building together and have a shared folder and have everybody record things into that folder, and then they're all there for everybody to use. Or with the new activities, you can share out links so that they all have those activities ready to roll. So those are some time saving tips. All right, so some ideas, math worksheets, concepts that you want to teach about math, spelling tests. These are great for spelling tests. I have to go to the bathroom, no problem. Just hit pause, off you go. I have 3 spelling groups. That's all good. It doesn't matter when you're using video, okay? Read alouds. I have kids that get pulled out. They get pulled down to a special education room, whatever it is. I just hit record and start recording my read aloud. And then later on, I can go ahead and share that with them so they didn't miss an important part. Reading strategies, I love this. I've seen teachers that put QR codes on their walls for like chunking or different reading strategies so that students can go up and hit the QR code and watch the quick little screencast of how to do those strategies. I love that. They work so great. Directions for centers. Do it a quick 1 minute, like, hey, here's what you're doing at this center. Love that too. Okay. One other thing you should know is you can record yourself right in Seesaw, right? If you do what your kids do when they explain a strategy, just tap the pencil, hit record. Now, this only works right now, I believe, in iOS, maybe on Kindles and other tablets. I know it's not out there on laptops or Chromebooks yet, the ability to draw and record. So you could actually do a screen recording using Screencastify, one of those apps I talked about, and then they can see you moving around in Seesaw. So in this one, if you watch the video, I'm actually showing them how I made the sort, and I'm moving the sort around so that when they do it, off they go, okay? And then you can see, like, here's some more ideas. Responding to a read aloud. I read aloud with something we're doing, and then I have them go ahead and respond to me, okay? It works great for that. Differentiated spelling tests, okay? That's a great way to use it. Word sorts and reading strategies, all right? By the way, you notice live video works too. You don't always have to use a screencasting app. Just use the video and go for it, all right? That works well too. And then, video lessons instead of sub plans. This is so awesome. I was gone for 3 days earlier this year, and I just basically, each night as I was gone, reloaded their folders with math lessons, reading lessons. And so all I had to leave for the substitute was either have the kids come up front and then have one of the students mirror their iPad and we'll all watch the lesson and my student will pause and my kids can turn and talk and do all the things we would normally do in our mini lesson, but I have a student actually pressing play and pause on the video of me talking. I love that. Also, obviously, kids can go off and listen to the video lessons on their own as well. But man, it saved me a million hours of trying to explain to a guest teacher how we teach reading. Oh my goodness, it was great. All right, and Seesaw works great for this. Any device, any ratio. Doesn't matter if you're 1-to-1, 3-to-1, you got a couple of iPads laying around, a couple Chromebooks. You can use it with any of those. It's really easy to share. No emailing, all that stuff. You just put them in Seesaw, your kids can watch them. And then also students can provide feedback using Seesaw. So how awesome is that? Okay. All right. I hope that that made sense to you. Here's what I would like to do. I want to open up to questions because I know there probably are some out there. So, Julie, are you ready? Are there questions for me?
Oh, thank you so much, Eric. This was
You're
wonderful.
welcome.
I even learned a ton, and I have some good questions waiting for you. So let me give you a few of those. A lot of questions are really specific to Viddle, and I don't want to speak for you, but I'm guessing what you're going to say is you can use whatever screencast app works for you that you like, however you would normally record. You don't necessarily need to learn a new tool for that. But go ahead and explain what it is you like about Viddle compared to some of the other ones. A lot of people are asking that.
Okay, so what I love about Viddle is that it gives you a lot of options of how you export. So when I make a video, the last thing I want is for the app to tell me, oh, you can only save it to Seesaw, or you can only save it to your camera roll, or this or that. That's one thing. I can just send it right to Drive, right from the app itself. I also like, again, like I said, I can zoom in and out. So it feels less like a presentation. I don't like apps personally where I have to set it up like slides, like a slideshow. I would rather have the page or whatever I'm sharing all on one slide and be able to zoom in, zoom out. I love that. And I love that it has the ability to highlight instead of just writing. So there's a lot of things I love about it. And if you want to learn more about Viddle, again, Teachers Talking Tech is my podcast, but if you go to my YouTube channel, Teachers Talking Tech, I think I even have a Viddle walkthrough right on there, like all the ways to use it. But you know, like you said, Julie, it's just a tool. It's not something you have to use. It's just the one I prefer. It's the one I like.
Okay, that's awesome. Here's another really good technical question that is probably worth clarifying. Since you have fake students, that means that you have to enable that students can see each other's work, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the workaround for that is just sharing these via QR code. So if you have it where students can't see each other's work, fake students will not work for you. Yeah, and I would just do it via QR code. So when they get to the station, they just hit the QR code and up pops the lesson. And that works just fine as well. It's just a little more work on your end to print out the QR code.
That's actually really helpful because somebody was asking earlier about the QR codes, and I was thinking that you were going to say you didn't use the QR codes, but that's a good workaround, like you said, if you don't want to use the fake students. So Marie is asking again about the fake students. So Marie, you create a fake student and then no parents
Yes.
are connected to that. So he's calling his fake students names like math folder or math whatever. And then that's not a folder that any parent is, that's not a student, I'm sorry. It's not a student that any parent is connected to. If you want to explain that a little better, since I butchered that there, Eric, you can explain how you.
No, no, you did great. So basically the idea behind fake students is like I add myself as a student in the class. I just make reading, word study. The reason I put the asterisk in front of them is because they stay at the top, okay? So no matter alphabetical order of your students can always go to the top and find the subjects, okay? So like if I click on reading right here, it's only gonna show that one thing I posted to reading. Also, reading is not a real student in my class, so there are no parents connected to reading. So if I post something there, no parents are going to say like, oh, well, thanks for sharing that random reading video with me. That was enjoyable, right? I don't want parents to see these videos, just students. So that's the reasoning behind using fake students is my kids can quickly find the video I want to share with them, and then I can quickly delete them later. It's just an organizational tool that I use.
Yes, perfect. Very well said. So Mary has an interesting question too, kind of a workflow question. She's saying she uses Google Classroom more for some of this course management and then uses Seesaw more as a portfolio. What are your thoughts about using Seesaw not always for a portfolio, but in some ways as course management?
Yeah, you know, I think it's really up to the teacher. I mean, some teachers do prefer Google Classroom for this, and I actually use it that way for our PD. Like for teacher PD, I do use Google Classroom. I just find Google Classroom a little cumbersome for young learners, and I like to just use Seesaw because they already feel comfortable with Seesaw. And I also like it because of the activities. I like the fact that when I create something in here or want to throw a video in here, that my kids can respond to me all in the same app. So I don't have to put it into Google Classroom, have them watch the video, then switch to Seesaw, take a picture of what they did. It's all right there in one app. And I like that. It's just an easy way, you know, and sharing video in Google Classroom is easy as well. but this is just the way I would prefer to do it because it's more streamlined. I hope that makes sense. But the streamlining and then also the activities, I think, is a huge part. Kids being able to go right back and give me feedback all within the same app.
I think that's very well said too. And I, of course, was teaching 12th graders and I was using Google Classroom for a lot of distributing and collecting assignments, for more management and using Seesaw as a portfolio. But at the age of students that you're teaching, of course, it makes sense to do it that way. Leslie's wondering if you would do a student-led group with anyone as young as kindergarten or first grade.
I definitely would, but what I would keep in mind, and I'll go back down to that slide, what I would keep in mind with a student-led group is it's all how you frame it. Okay, so if you would like a student-led group, you really have to tell them like it's going to be very hard for you so that they know there's going to be some moments where it's difficult, that you need to really make it clear that that this is all about working together. I stress teamwork. I don't really stress the teacher role. I say the teacher's role is just to call on kids and make sure not everybody's talking at once. But the idea here is collaboration and communication. I don't really care, and I'll tell them this, I don't care if the answers are wrong on the page. I will be fine telling your parents that communication is so important that that is the goal of this station. With younger learners, I would ease their way into it. I would use it less often and with a lot more guidance. And it does take a little while to set up, but just be ready for class meetings. There's been times I've had to say, hold the phone, everybody stop. Let's all come down and talk about how we can run this better. So as long as you're ready for it not to go perfectly, because it will not, then you will have success with it. But just know that it's not going to go perfectly, and you really are going to have to guide them on what it's like to collaborate and be a teacher. But it's very valuable. I have so many kids that have blossomed by being part of this group, and so I would highly recommend it.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have Stephanie asking, what do you think is the best length of time for a video?
I think the best length of time for a video is right around 5 to 7 minutes. That's a great question. Keep in mind that if you're having them pause, that's going to add a lot of time. So if you have 6 questions you're asking them on a math page and your video takes 5 minutes, it'll probably take your kids 8 to 10 minutes to finish that video. And I should have mentioned that. I'm so glad you asked that question, Stephanie. So keep that in mind. If your videos get too long, it's just like anything else. They will lose interest. So yeah, keep them short and keep them succinct is what I guess the word I would use is, so that you don't lose their interest.
That's actually a great tip about pausing and giving them that extra time. Good point. So Lisa is asking if you have ever recorded like an ebook or an audiobook. Like, do you ever use something like Shadow Puppet and then read the story and flip the pages? Have you had any luck with that?
Yeah, so I use that sometimes. Like if it's just a read aloud, I have my kids use Storyline Online or something where I found a great read aloud. But if I'm trying to do a specific skill, like if I'm trying to teach fluency, or if I'm trying to do chunking or whatever the skill is that you're trying to teach, then I will read parts of a book. But I don't often do an entire read aloud. The two reasons the two reasons I have in the past, I would say, one is like I mentioned, if kids get pulled out, I like to record my read alouds so they don't miss something. And second one is over summer break. We were in the middle of Dragon Masters and they were all into this book and we didn't have time to finish it. So I told them over the summer, I'm going to go ahead and record the next 2 books and just have your parents play them for you and you can follow along and I'll post a new chapter or 2 each week. So that was kind of a cool reason to use it. But that would be the 2 reasons I would say. But you know what? If your kids love your voice and you read in a specific way, then do it. There's no rules about it. I would just say, work harder, work smarter, not harder, I guess is what they say, right?
That's awesome. Great answer and well said. Hey, we are actually all the way out of questions, but I want to say one more thing before we conclude. I want to remind everyone that they're going to get a pop-up on their screen in just a minute. That's going to be some survey questions. And I would love for you to give us your feedback because that's how we make our PD in Your PJs webinar series better. We use your feedback as we determine topics for new webinars. So please take a minute and answer those survey questions. As a bonus, we also draw a random t-shirt winner every week from those those survey responses. So be sure to take a minute and answer that for us. Eric, everybody gave you lots of compliments. The question box was actually full of positive feedback, more so than questions. So people were very excited about this. And I think mostly they are just excited to get the slides so they can go back and take a look at all of those resources. So thank you so much for your willingness to share. I'm assuming you would connect with all these folks over email and Twitter if they wanted to reach out to you.
For sure, for sure. I will add my email to the slides. I'm realizing I did not do that. And then Twitter is a great way to get a hold of me. And again, just if you check out my podcast, there are some more things that go along with this there, YouTube channel. So if you're on your own timeline, you can check there. But I am more than happy to help anybody who needs it, for sure.
Thank you so much. I had about 5 more thank you. This was a great webinars popping up in the question box just as you were saying that. So people were very excited to hear from you tonight, Eric. Thank you so much. I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Be sure to look for some of those upcoming webinars that might be on topics that interest you. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope we see you again really soon. Bye-bye.